O'clock, so we'll start. And I want to start just by telling a small story about this new superpower I have. I was traveling to New Zealand recently for the New Zealand Games, where I raced competitively in a monoski. And I was traveling with the US national team, which is the team I'm trying to get on right now to ski in the 2018 Paralympics. But when we travel, we have our ski bags and our monoskis, which are these rigs that we strap ourselves into and sit down in, and they have shocks and metal and all this stuff underneath them that actuate like a knee so that we can race down the hill. And as well as that, we have a carry-on luggage and our other luggage with all of our stuff in it. So it's a lot of stuff for anyone to carry, let alone someone who doesn't have legs. So I'm going, and because we're on a team, instead of standing in line with all this gear and being just a cluster, we decided we'd stage everything up in front, and then we'd get in line and wait in line until we got there, and then we had these huge pile of ski bags that we turned in all at once. So we're staging all this stuff, and I'm carrying in my ski bag, and inside my ski bag I have a set of giant slalom skis, and I have a set of slalom skis, which are a little bit shorter, and I have a free ski, and then I have a couple extra skis just in case. And all race skis are like metal core with these big solid bindings on them and everything else. So this ski bag, even though it's on rollers, still weighs probably 50, 60 pounds, something like that. And I'm putting it up into this pile, and I drop it out of my hand, and it lands right on my foot. And in line, and I'm setting the stage here, in line in front of us. Can everyone hear me? Okay. In line, everyone in front, there's this team of college volleyball, girls college volleyball, and they're all in line, and they see me drop this on my foot, and I let out this involuntary scream, just like anything falls on your foot, you know? And I let out this involuntary little scream like a girl, and I'm like, ah, you know? And these girls in line, they all kind of jump back, and they're like, oh my gosh, are you okay? Is everything all right? And I put my hands in my head, and I'm like, I don't know why I just screamed. I don't have feet. It didn't hurt at all. Like, there's no reason for me to yelp or scream like something even hurt a little bit. But involuntarily, I just like let out this little yell because, you know, in your head, that's what you do. You know, like something falls on your foot, it's gonna hurt. And my brain just kicked in. Oh, that hurt. But no, it didn't. It did not hurt at all. And so they're all nervous and worried about me, and they're like, oh my gosh, and then I'm shocked and now very embarrassed, and that didn't hurt at all. And then all these volleyball girls just giggle and laugh, and I ran away like a true superhero. I'm out of here. And so my name's Joshua Elliott. I'm here telling my origins story today, how I became disabled and how I became super. Last year, skiing for the Aspen Valley Ski and Snowboard Club Adaptive Program. It's a Paralympic development program for up-and-coming skiers. I took 3 gold medals in speed nationals at the beginning of the year. I took another gold and 2 silvers at the US Tech Nationals, and I took 2 more silvers in Canadian Nationals. I also participated in World Championships in Panorama, Canada, where I went up against the best of the best in the entire world. It's going to be the same group of disabled people that I'm going to have to go up against in the Olympics. And I participated in X Games, where I got dead last. But it was very exciting learning experience, and I'm going to do X Games again this year. I'm going to do much better. I promised myself that. But there's not too much to go when you're last to get better. As well as skiing, I do motivational speaking and different engagements where I try to inspire people by telling my story and telling my testimony and talking about the experiences that I've gone through and that I've overcome. I like to give speeches at churches because a big part of my testimony is my relationship with God and the experience I went through, which is kind of my origin story that I'm going to talk about. I got to do an awesome ministry with Fellowship of Christian Athletes for all these little kids. And kids ask, like, hands down, the craziest questions. I've never had to not answer a question before. I feel like I'm a real open book. And kids are the ones that come up with the questions that are just off the wall. And you're like, all right, I can't even answer that right now. But I love inspiring people, and I love doing that. So as well as professional skiing, telling my story is kind of what I do now. But like I said, the story I'm telling today is my origin story. It's how I became who I am today and how I got into what I'm doing today. Obviously, I wasn't always like this. There are people who are disabled who were born with disabilities, and those guys are cheaters. So, before I was injured, grew up here in Yakima, went to Davis High School, met my best friend Jed Cates, whose little sister I eventually married, and she shakes her head because she hates that. She's my best friend, and she's absolutely amazing. She's been with me through everything. But in high school, meeting Jed, he introduced me to snowboarding. And snowboarding was really my passion. It almost cost me graduating high school. And then college got in the way of my snowboarding after high school, where I just decided that one was more important than the other. So that was an incredible part of my life. But because snowboarding and kind of that lifestyle and having fun was prevalent, I ended up joining the military 2 years after I graduated high school. And I took my snowboard everywhere with me. One of my fondest stories that kind of go along with how important this part of my life is taking my snowboard to Japan with me. And so I got to tell people I was an international snowboarder because I was stationed in Japan, but I had my board with me. So I'm like, oh yeah, I ski in the United States and I ski in Japan. I take it everywhere with me. It's amazing. But I made some really good friends there. And in true snowboard fashion, we always teach our friends by taking them on the hardest run first. And then laughing at them when you get to the bottom, saying, yeah, you suck, right? Now are you going to listen to what I tell you? But we were at this ski resort, Mizuho, and it's a very nice Japanese ski resort, and I have a buddy of mine, Pete Torres, and it was his first time on a snowboard, first time snowboarding, and I'm with my buddy Eric, and Eric and I are ripping. Like, we're cutting down all the trails, taking the backcountry stuff, like, going off cliffs and jibbing off whatever we could find. And Pete's trying to keep up with us, like trying to do all this stuff, and he's falling and crashing and just having a hard time. And finally, like, Pete, why don't you go down this one run and we'll meet you at the bottom, because we're going to take this black diamond. And this black diamond is kind of the expert course when it comes to snowboarding. And this particular one kind of goes down this couloir, and then it hits this ridge line, and then you got to go literally like between these two trees. You got to stay on this ridge because it's sort of a cliff on one side and a cliff on the other, and then you kind of drop off into this great little valley that opens up, and it's really untracked. And it's a beautiful, beautiful area. And so my buddy Eric and I just love this run, and Pete's like, oh, I can do it. I'm going to follow you guys down there. We're like, dude, this is serious stuff. You probably shouldn't do it. And whatever we could say to make him feel insecure and inadequate, we did. So he's got the man complex, and he says, no, I can do it. So he follows us down there, and Eric and I just rip down, cut through these trees, drop down into this beautiful valley, and get down to the bottom, go off some jumps, and we're waiting at the bottom and waiting and waiting and waiting. And we're like, where's Pete? Where's Pete? I was like, all right, I'm going to go around and flush him out. I'm going to come back around and I'm going to catch him. So I go back up the list, and I'm coming down this run again, and that spot that I told you was like a cliff on either side. I stop, and he is hanging off a tree off the side of this cliff, and there's these two Japanese guys, like, don't speak English. He doesn't speak Japanese, but he's like screaming bloody murder that he's gonna die falling off. And it's really, he wouldn't have died. It's not like a sheer cliff. But he thought he was gonna die, and he was definitely off the course. So I didn't help him at all. I just stood back and watched as they pulled him up and they take him down, and the whole way down, like, he is so dead tired that he's falling. Every 2 seconds, he stands up, falls down, stands up, falls down. And I'm just kind of chuckling in the back of my head because I remember when that was me, like the first time I went snowboarding, my first Black Diamond experience was the same thing. It was like my first day, get to this thing, and they're like, oh yeah, you can do it, why not? You know, this is expert stuff. And I rolled down the entire cliff down to the bottom, but I was hooked. And so I saw Pete off the side of this hill, and like these Japanese people, and I knew, I was like, oh, he's hooked. This is going to be an experience he's going to talk about forever. But snowboarding and being on the snow has always been this huge part of my life. The other big thing in my life was being a Marine, and leading troops, being a Marine. My job was a combat engineer. And in the Marines, a combat engineer is known as the jack of all trades, master of nothing. Because they literally wanted us to do anything, but we weren't really good at anything. We could do it, but we weren't good at it. So we had to do wood frame construction, we had to do bridging, we had to do landmine clearing, we had to do defensive positions, we had to do pretty much whatever they asked us to do. And when I was stationed in Korea for this deployment, and I was in charge of a small group of Marines. And as the leader, I had about 3 different job sites where I had these Marines at doing different things. And it's hot and muggy, and nobody likes Korea. It's and every night there's this bar on the base. It's called the Hard Rock. And Rock is the Republic of Korea. And so Hard Rock Cafe. And we'd go in there and kind of unwind and have a good time. And my Marines would always like bring pitchers and pitchers up, and we'd just have all these pitchers of beer, and we'd be going at it. And, you know, go to bed late or whatever, and I would always wake up, and I was supposed to you know, do physical training in the mornings. But I would wake up to my alarm, and I would always be just a little bit tired still. I said, I don't want to get up yet. And so I'd set the alarm later, and then would wake up about an hour or 2 later. Come to find out, like a couple weeks into this deployment, my Marines were like, they had this whole pool going to buy me beer so that I wouldn't PT them in the morning. Because they knew that I would slay them with like bricks and hills and everything else I could to make us stronger, you know, and they didn't like that idea. So they were like, well, if we just buy him pitchers of beer at night, then he won't wake up in the morning. That was one of them. And then the other part of the job, that was all construction junk that we did there. The other part of the job was demolition. And so some of my fondest memories of demolition was my first deployment, first combat deployment. I was in Iraq. And we had done operation after operation through 2 cities. And we had pushed the enemy all the way until we got them kind of trapped in this small city called New Ubaidi. And it was very like on edge, high kinetic, like the craziest thing you could imagine Marines doing, we were doing it. Shooting rockets into buildings, throwing grenades downstairs, all this great stuff. But we were on line, like Marines shoulder to shoulder on line, pushing through this village. And I got to this backyard, and I was supposed to go through the wall so we could get to the next house. And so I put all this C4 on the wall, getting ready to blow it down. And in this backyard are a couple ducks and a goat and a chicken. And I said I loved being a Marine. Maybe I loved it too much. Because I was looking at these animals and talking to them. I was like, you're all going to die. This explosion is going to kill you. And I'm excited about this. It's sadistic, and I'm putting these explosions up. And the yard really couldn't have been further from this row to the wall, from the front row, and say this is the wall. So I mean, not a very big backyard, and I'm using quite a few pounds of C4. And I'm excited to see this big explosion and come, and there's going to be blood and guts everywhere, and it's just going to be this absolute mess. And so I pull the thing, pop smoke, the time fuse starts going, I run through the house, there's a big explosion, boom, everything blows up, I run back through the house, and I'm ready, and I'm like coming through the house, and I know that it's just going to be this massacre in the backyard. And I come running out, and the goat is over here, all of its fur is blown to one side, it's shell-shocked, perfectly fine, it's alive, it's like shaking a little bit, and it looks at me, and I look at it, and I'm like, well, you're lucky. And there's the other goats, and they're like over in this corner. I think they got blown into the corners. And they were fine. Like the ducks, just nothing was going on. And this chicken was spread eagle, like as wide as you could get a chicken right in front of where the blast was. And I dubbed that the Medal of Honor chicken, because it took the blast for all the other animals. And I was a little disappointed, but good job for the chicken. And I loved that job. You know, I loved what I did in the Marines, and it was ultimately that job that that brings us to my real origin story of the change in my life, how things happened. It was my second deployment. I was in Sangin, Afghanistan, and Sangin is commonly known as the birthplace of the Taliban denomination of the Muslim religion. And they were fighting very hard for that territory. And again, my job as a combat engineer was totally different than anything else I'd done at the time. And they wanted me to use a metal detector to find improvised explosive devices or landmines or bombs that had been placed in the ground. And because this was such a high kinetic fight, and because they were really trying to hold that ground, hold that land, there were IEDs all over the place, everywhere. And so we would walk in single file lines everywhere we went with a combat engineer like myself or one of my Marines leading the patrol with a metal detector, and we were looking for wires, batteries, anything that we could get a signal off of to try to find these bombs in the ground. And we'd dig them up, and as soon as we found a pressure plate and some wire or a battery pack connected to wire or an explosive itself and any other one of the things I just mentioned, we could call in EOD or the disposal unit, and they'd come and they'd pull it out of the ground real carefully, and they'd have their suits on and all this other stuff. But before we identified it, we had to find it, and that was our job. So I found a few. I had other Marines that had eagle eyes that found a lot. Maybe they should have been on patrol that day. But it was April 18th, 2011, on a patrol that we were doing an entry control point. And we walked out and we took over this building in order to take over this corner. And at the corner, we were going to stop all traffic, talk to people, gain intelligence, look for IED-making materials or weapons caches, anything that was coming through that area. We were stopping people, we were looking for it. Before we took over that corner, though, we took over the building. And the reason we took over the building was, one, a staging point, and two, to put in guardian angels. Guardian angels are guys with big guns on rooftops. Very simple. If anything goes wrong on the ground, we have the high position, we have machine guns in place ready to go. So we take over the building, and I use the metal detector, and I walk up, and they're following, and it's 2 gun teams, 4 people plus myself, 5 people. We walk across, I walk up to the side of the building, I set in 1 gun team, we move, set in the other gun team facing the other direction, so they have their field of views, and I'm walking back across the roof, and it was kind of this multi-level roof. So it's high ground, a little lower, and then the spot where we had come up at, which was relatively low to the ground, easy to get up onto. And it was that lowest part that I must have been inches off of where we had all just walked. I was walking back the same path we had all just walked. and I stepped directly on a 20-pound improvised explosive device that was put in the roof of that building. And as soon as it went off, time slowed down. And I went on what's called the 5-minute flight. It happens quick, but your brain can't process all that information so fast. And so time, or your version of time, kind of slows down. I remember the first thought that went through my head when I stepped on that IED was, someone stepped on an IED. And I was a little peeved. I was a little mad that I worked so hard to keep everyone safe, and then someone set one off. How dare they? And I'm flying through the air, and it was about the pinnacle before I started falling back down that there was a realization moment. I said, no, I stepped on the IED. And I started falling back down, and I remember seeing the roof of the building go past my eyes as I landed in the room below on this pile of rubble that used to be the roof. And in this room, it was full of dust and full of smoke and full of debris and everything else. It was in my lungs, it was in my ears, it was in my eyes. But I knew that from everyone else's vantage point, wherever anyone else was, there was a large explosion and Josh was gone. And in my field, we call that pink mist. That means you just got vaporized and there's not even anything to look for. But I wasn't vaporized. I was alive. And I was in this room below. And so I knew I had to make some kind of noise. I had to call out. And it was this classic call out in the dark moment where I was saying, I'm in here, I'm alive, I'm in here. And looking back, wounds being what they were, it was probably guttural, gargling noises. But I was still doing my best to let them know that I was alive. And there was a couple Marines that found me. And I remember them saying, we found him. And I knew right then, like, the guys around me would do what they're supposed to do to save my life. And they pulled me out of the room, and I had a medical corpsman there. He put 2 tourniquets on both of my legs. And he put a tourniquet on my arm and tightened those up. Tightened them all up, stopping the bleeding. Put gauze pads all up and down my stomach and on my hand and on my neck. And they lifted me from there and they took me out into these poppy fields where they had called the helicopter to come in. And as the medical corpsman is tightening these tourniquets even more, tightening even more, through the pain of getting blown up and the shock of everything else, I look him dead in the eye and I say, Doc, that hurts. And he goes, well, shut up, they're saving your life. So that was, it's a funny thing to think of, but I mean, those things were pinching my bone. And they were saving my life. They were choking the blood, but it was tourniquets are no joke, man. Those things were painful. And as he's working on me and waiting for the helicopter to come in, he looks at me and he says, whose hands are you in? Whose hands are you in? And he meant his, like, I got you, bro, But the only thing that I could think of at that moment, the only response that I had was, I'm in God's hands. And I truly was. The first thing that really saved my life was that corpsman and the team of people that were with me that day that called in the 9 line, that found me in the room, that got the helicopter to the right spot as fast as they could. When the helicopter did land, it was different. It took longer for this. I mean, usually, something happens, you get the helicopter there, you want to get them to the hospital, you want to get them to help as fast as you can. And I remember I had a staff sergeant touring the area at the time. He was from a different area, and he was just kind of evaluating how I was doing. I failed, by the way. And he was just storming up and down, like just mad. He's like, where's the helicopter? It should be here. It should be here. He was just mad that it wasn't here already. Because the helicopter, you want the helicopter there. There's this thing called the magic hour. That's the first hour after the injury. If you can get into surgery, then you have a much higher chance of staying alive. And so the helicopter finally gets there. Forever, and he's huffing and puffing about the whole thing. He's like, oh, about time! They show up, they lift me up, and they throw me in there, and they waited to leave, to come pick me up, until they had all the information they needed. Because they showed up with doctors and nurses, they showed up with my blood type, IV fluids, They showed up ready to start traumatic surgery on the helicopter. It's called a tricky flight. And I don't remember the exact nomenclature, but it's a traumatic injury evacuation, something or another. It was ran by the British. And the second I got in there, they started. They put IV fluids in. They started blood transfusions. They put me into a drug-induced coma. And I remember fighting it, like not physically fighting it, but like I didn't want to fall asleep. I didn't want to lose consciousness. That's part of the training. Like, you got to stay awake. You got to stay conscious for all this stuff. So I'm fighting it. I don't want to fall asleep. And I look over at this nurse who's all covered up, scrubbed up, ready to go. And I go, "Can I sleep now?" And it's the first female voice I think I heard in quite a while, because I was in the boondocks of Afghanistan, surrounded by male Marines the whole time. She has this gorgeous Australian or English accent. She goes, "Yes, love, you can sleep." And I'm out like that. Say, all right. And it was there, you know, it was the second thing that saved my life, was that helicopter and that team of people that showed up ready to start surgery. The next section, the next part of this origins journey was an experience that's really beyond comprehension, and I'm going to try to explain it to you the best I can. But I traveled into a spiritual realm. I went through a dream. I started in a dream, and I recognized it as a dream. And it was actually a dream that I've had before. So it was a reoccurring dream. And I knew it was a dream. I said, okay, well, I'm in a dream. And it's a dream I've had before when my body was really sick. I said, okay, I have a dream. I'm really sick. Well, obviously, I just got my legs blown off. I know. But I went further than that. And I came to a point or a place or a plane where I was spiritual. And it wasn't a dream. It was conscious, but in a different reality. And it was in that place where I came in front of a being of absolute power and absolute light. And I recognized it as God. And I'm not going to say who's God or what's God. That's beyond my will to say. But being a Christian, I believe that was God the Father sitting on the throne. And he spoke to me, and he simply said, "Are you ready?" And those words were balled up and put right on my heart. And I heard them as clear as I'm talking to you. But I didn't hear them with my ears. I felt them with my heart. They were just put right here. "Are you ready?" I said, "No, I'm not ready. I'm not ready." Because that is, hey, I'm going to open up your life and see if you're worthy to come into heaven. I was like, no, I'm not ready. Like, I don't think any of us are in that place, in that time. Like, we're never ready, you know? I said, "No, I'm not ready," and I woke up like that. But those words have been in my heart. From that moment on, I was transformed into a new person. And from that day, moving forward, I've kept those words and kept that testimony in my heart. And now I have these new superpowers. Superpowers of being able to change my height at will. I could be very short or very tall. If you ever want to rob a bank, I could be 6'1", and then we can get in the getaway car and I'll switch my legs out and I'll be 5'3". So the cop pulls us over and says, "We're looking for a white male that's 6'1". So "That's not me, sir. I'm much shorter than that." I'm immune to lower extremity injuries, like dropping my skis on my feet. I learned that. Getting shot at or kicked in the shins doesn't bother me as long as you're down here. It's okay. I make an incredibly good zombie because I can just pop my legs off and pour blood all over and crawl around, and people really freak out. It's an amazing opportunity to talk to kids because if they're young enough, I can lie and say I lost my legs because I didn't eat my vegetables, or because I lied to my mom, you know, anything like that. I'm down. You know, if they're too young to understand war, I could definitely just say, you know, no, you can't swim a half an hour after you've eaten because you'll lose your legs. And they believe that. I don't know why. The kids are impressionable, I guess. But my biggest superpower is being back on snow. And it was through a recreational therapist and through therapy that that I tried to get back into snowboarding. Because I was a snowboarder before, and that's one of those things that I had lost, and I tried to regain it. I said, I want to be a snowboarder again. This is what I want to do. So I went to Breckenridge, Colorado, tried to snowboard, came off the hill a broken man. I came off the hill in tears, day after day, just torn apart because I couldn't do it like I used to be able to do it. And then I was introduced to this thing called a monoski. And it's designed, it's like the wheelchair of skiing. But I got on it, and it was within an hour or two that I was independent, I was making turns on my own, and I was in control. And I knew right there, I said, this is my sense of normality. This is me getting back on the snow. This is exciting. I can do this. And it was very shortly after that. I got injured in 2011 in April. I first tried the monoski in December of 2011. And I got invited to Aspen in August of 2012. And it's been 4 years now. And I kind of told you about what I did last year. But monoskiing is a means of an end. You know, I mean, I want to represent the United States again. I want to get that gold medal. I want to bring it back to the United States. But my favorite thing to do and my passion is to tell my testimony, to inspire people, and to say that you can do it. You know, there's adversity that comes in our lives, and you got to find the heroes around you that help you become a hero, that help you progress. And the ultimate goal, other than inspiring others, my personal goal is to try to make the 2018 Paralympics in Pyeongchang, South Korea, and to race for the United States, to represent this great country again, and to bring home a gold medal. So, if I've inspired you at all, I'm so glad you're here. Absolutely. So what we're going to do now is just open it up for question and answer. I'm an open book. I will answer any questions you have. And it looks like we have about 15 minutes for that. Ready, set, shoot.
You forgot to share how wonderful of a rattlesnake killer you are.
Oh, another superpower. I'm immune to rattlesnake bites. They just can't get high enough. So if you have a rattlesnake problem, I'll come step on it for you. A good superpower right there.
How did this experience stem from?
The rattlesnake experience? It comes from my mother-in-law's fear of snakes. And her flower business. Nursery business. My mother and father-in-law, Gene and Sheila Cates, have a nursery in Natchez where they grow.
East Valley.
Where does it say? East Valley.
Yeah.
In East Valley, wrong direction. Where they grow potted plants for sale. And it was in these potted plants area where there was a nice rattlesnake curled up this last summer. And Sheila called me and says, "Get up here and kill this rattlesnake, because I can't do any work with this thing around." So me and my buddy go up there with a little BB gun, a little air rifle, and we were able to. Moving the plants was the scary part, because you got to like bend down and you got your hands down there. But once we exposed the rattlesnake, I was able to kind of walk right up to it, pop it in the head. So that was good. Winner. Yeah.
I was going to say, my son is a medic in the Army, and the tourniquets, as soon as you mentioned the tourniquets, those are horrible. He came home after his AIT and did that to me and every one of his friends, put on tourniquets until we all dropped.
Oh, yeah. Oh, they're incredible. It's like if you could dig in and poke your bone, it's like that, but a ring, and it just like squeezes down. The whole idea behind a tourniquet is that it uses your soft tissue to squeeze close all of the veins and arteries that are spewing blood. And in order to do that, it pinches all that soft tissue against the bone. So to get the blood to stop, you just keep tightening them and turning them, and they get smaller and smaller and smaller until they've squeezed all those little veins and arteries closed. And it's insanely painful. It's
And
incredible.
when you think it's tight enough, you just keep going.
Yeah, you keep going. Yeah, you just once you've gotten used to it, yeah, turn it one more. Yes.
Josh, you are a true real-life superhero. Has anybody approached you about doing a comic strip on you and your tales over the last, how many ever tours you've taken and all that?
I have not been approached for a comic book. I did get asked if I would be a character in one of another person's comic strip, but not my tales, just to kind of use me as a character. I think they want to make me a police officer or something, I'm not sure. But I have toyed with the idea, and Sam and I have talked about the idea of writing a book where we go through not only my experiences, but the experience of the doctors and nurses, of the team of guys that was around me, of my parents, in-laws, and grandma, how those first few days impacted them. And so you don't just get my perspective, but the perspective of the people around me, in sort of a House on, what was that book? House on Mango Street style, where you're getting different views of the same kind of area. But I mean, I'm all up for a comic strip. Like, that would be a lot of fun. That would be exciting. Absolutely. So does that answer your question?
It does answer my question. And I apologize for missing the first part of it. I was on the other end thinking that's where it was. How many tours have you served?
I did one tour in Iraq and half of a tour in Afghanistan. Actually, both tours I got blown up. The first tour, when I was in Iraq, I was on a 7-ton that ran over a roadside bomb, and it hit the gas tank right past the front tire, and the whole thing went up in flames quite quickly. But other than a small, I don't think it was a traumatic brain injury. It was other than a couple concussions and a blown eardrum, I think we all made it out of that one pretty safely. And then there was this fireworks show as we realized that they had blown up our ammo vehicle, and we watched everything pop off in multiple directions, and then the C4 catches fire and everything dropped out underneath. That whole truck was like, the end state of that truck was unrecognizable. That was also the day I almost got shot by half the people in my battalion. There was an underpass. They went under this railroad, and then there was these phone lines, and then there was underpass, phone lines, bomb. And so we were somewhere in the middle of this convoy, underpass, phone lines, bomb, and they hit our car and separated our convoy into two big sections. And I ended up on the far side section, while the other people, and this is in the middle of the night, we were doing a black ops, so there's no lights on, everyone has night vision goggles, and it's dark as anything with your eyes, and then you put your night vision goggles on, and everything's lit up, and everyone has their IR lights on, and IR headlights on, and IR scopes on, and all this other stuff, infrared everything. But the problem was this train, this overpass, overpass that went over, was cutting off our unit communication. So we have these small radios to talk to one another, and we couldn't talk from one side of the convoy to the other side of the convoy because of this railroad track thing. And at one point they told me to go up there to watch for anyone crossing over the railroad tracks one way or the other. So it was me and two other guys, and I put them in place, and I said, watch for anyone going across these railroad tracks, and I'll sit in the middle and communicate stuff. And I'm up on top of there, and I get this little infrared dot on my chest, and I hear over my little radio, hey, there's someone up on the railroad tracks, can we shoot him? And then, no, you can't shoot him. That's friendly. And then I hear, oh yeah, I see him too. And then there's more dots. And meanwhile, like half the battalion of Marines has their infrared lights on me asking for permission to shoot. And I'm screaming into my radio, don't shoot. And I'm yelling at these guys. I'm like, get down as low as you can. We're going to get killed. So get down, get down. And luckily we had secondary communication. We did a little IR light thing, 3, 2, 1, and then these lights dissipated. And I was thankful again. Did not get killed by my own people. So that was insane. So that was one tour, and then Afghanistan was just a whole nother debacle with the IEDs scattered everywhere. But other than that, I did a lot of tours, operations in Korea and Australia, Egypt, Philippines, Japan, a lot of time in Japan, Okinawa, mainland Japan, Mount Fuji. I was in the Marines for 10 years before I retired, so I got to go all over the place. As far as combat tours, just the two. Huh? That's what you think. All right, what else? What else?
I have one more question.
Go for it.
I have 1,000 questions, actually. I think I was supposed to be asking you the questions earlier, but...
I have I'm actually going to be at a booth. They have a booth space open for me, and so I'll be able to answer any and all questions over there.
Okay.
But please.
Well, one question, I'm a true patriot, and I see someone sitting on the street corner, even if they don't say I'm a veteran, and I have a hard time not giving them $1. I stop by and buy food from them all the time, blankets, t-shirts, I can't pass them by. But how do you feel about that? When somebody has a sign on the side of the road, they don't have any legs, unfortunately, or arms. They have a sign there saying, I'm a United States veteran, please help me. I hear my friends who are not less fortunate than you drive by and say, get a job. Well, how do you feel about that?
That's a very good question. We recently moved down to San Diego, and bums travel hundreds of miles to live in San Diego because it's great moderate temperature. There's lots of wonderful bridges and cardboard aplenty. But I feel for them. It breaks my heart a little bit to see them out on the street and stuff like that. And a lot of, I mean, I don't want to give a specific number or give a demographic, but through the Vietnam War, the people that came back and a lot of the veterans that came back injured and dealing with PTSD, shell shock, traumatic brain injuries, physical injuries. They got fed up with the VA. The American people, it wasn't a popular war. And there were some that rose above that, and there were some that totally got beat down and sunk under that. And for the ones that rose above it, there are so many programs and so many things out there for veterans of today like myself, and so many advocators and so many people with the VA that make sure that what happened back then doesn't happen again. And I really feel sorry for those guys who fell under and now are homeless because of whatever circumstances there are. I don't give money out to every single one of them, but when I do have $1, when I do have some change, or I have a couple extra donuts in the car, or I'm sitting at In-N-Out and they happen to be around, I'll buy them a burger, or I'll give them a couple bucks or something like that. My wife's in Christian ministry right now, and she's going through a book called Toxic Charity. And there's only so much we can do handing out before you really got to stand on your own 2 feet, And so it's a matter of how much do you want to give and give and give until you got to say, you got to help yourself out a little bit too. So it's a little bit of a two-edged sword. I feel very, very bad for those people. I feel for them. I want to help them. And there are programs out there for them to get help. But at the same time, I can't help everyone. I can't just give it all away. You got to have a little bit of self-determination. Does that answer?
It does, but you should do a comic book, and then I'll hand it out to every single one of them.
Yeah, all right, that's good. Hey, thank you everyone so much for being in here. Thank you for your questions and your support. And I will be going around the corner to one of the little areas for for whatever else. Anything